Prime Minister Scott Morrison gave a big speech today on national security. A lot of it was actually good, telling us that the war in Ukraine for freedom does affect us, particularly now that China and Russia have signed a deal to back each other.
This is just the latest example of an authoritarian regime seeking to challenge the status quo through threats and violence. A new arc of autocracy is instinctively aligning to challenge and reset the world order in their own image.
And there was a good line in the speech about the $70 million of our money that Morrison has sent to buy things like missiles for Ukraine.
Our missiles are on the ground now. If there is further effective support we can provide to assist Ukraine's efforts, we will. Every day Ukraine resists is a further day of humiliation for President Putin and imposes a heavy price on his illegal, reckless and callous acts of aggression. So yes, we have offered our prayers, but in Australia, we have also sent our ammunition.
That's great, but I would have liked to have heard a lot more about the lessons for us and how Ukraine is able to fight so well against an overwhelming army. We might need those lessons one day with China. How about more missiles for us, for a start? Instead, there was this announcement for a second submarine base for the nuclear submarines that the government still hasn't ordered.
Today, I can announce that the government has decided to establish a future submarine base on the east coast of Australia as well. 3 preferred locations on the east coast have now been identified. They are Brisbane, Newcastle and Port Kembla.
Joining me is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of the Australian newspaper. Greg, good to catch up with you. Your reaction to Scott Morrison's speech today?
Well, Andrew, let me pay tribute to your magnificent opening package on Ukraine. And I admire everything Scott Morrison said about Ukraine and China. And I don't mean to be the skunk at the party, but I got to say to you, Andrew, talk is cheap, actions count. And what did the Prime Minister announce? He announced that a defence committee will look at a location for a base to take a shape over the next 20 years. So the $10 billion for the base is to cover the next 20 years for subs which don't exist, we haven't ordered, and God knows when we'll ever get. There is no way on God's green earth we'll get this fleet of nuclear subs in under 25 years. Now imagine if Volodymyr Zelensky, looking at the Russian threat, had said, well, I'm going to base my national defence on weapons which I can't begin to get for 15 years and certainly won't complete getting for 25 years. If we can spend $70 million on missiles for Ukraine, how about a couple of $2 billion for long-range, ground-based missiles for Australia, instead of which the Army is buying tanks and heavy armour we can never use? You go through the Navy. Our offshore patrol vessels have no weapons. Strange but true. Our future frigates are seriously delayed already under the government's own official estimates and won't come, the first of them, until the mid-2030s. The nuclear subs, they exist in science fiction time. This is a kind of a Star Trek capability. Now, even allowing that all these things in some bizarre alternate universe make sense, why isn't the government giving us some extra capability in the next 5 to 10 years? And the answer is it's doing absolutely nothing. Now, I'm no natural enemy of the Morrison government, but I am just flabbergasted that in this big national security speech and in the hundreds of billions of dollars that Josh Frydenberg has flushed down the toilet with COVID, we've got not one new missile, not one new warship, nothing. I just can't believe it, Andrew. Perhaps I'm strange, but it just strikes me as unbelievable.
I agree. I mean, I like to hear about nuclear submarine. We do need it, and I know you can't, get it out of the fridge in a day. I got all that, but I need to know what we're going to do to protect ourselves in the next 10 years, 5 years even, if the worst comes to the worst with China. 5 years is probably the longest I'm prepared to wait. And we see from Ukraine, you need weapons of self-defense. If the war comes to you, and I'm not hearing anything about this. Now, I thought, yesterday, Defence Minister Peter Dutton, I thought he was right. He indicated, yes, we would also arm Taiwan as we've been arming Ukraine so it could defend itself from China. Here he is.
Well, I think we do whatever we can to deter China from acts of aggression in our region. There's no sense in pretending that it's not happening, that the acquisition of nuclear weapons by China is not happening. It is happening. And
so I'm just trying to get you clear about
amassing huge forces.
Now, Labor's looking like winning the next election. I thought the reaction from the last Labor Prime Minister we had, Kevin Rudd, was pathetic to say the least, and probably recklessly irresponsible. He called Dutton Benito, likening him to the Italian fascist dictator Mussolini, and said Dutton was just saying all this to make himself look more right-wing than Morrison so he could become the next Liberal leader. Greg Sheridan, how can Rudd, a former Prime Minister, be so abusive and say something so idiotic?
Well, Rudd's comments are a disgrace. They're an utter disgrace. They're also very hypocritical because he was the first one to demand higher standards and don't be personal and everything. One footnote to what you were just saying, though, we not only need defensive weapons, we need strike weapons. We're the 13th biggest economy in the world. I agree with arming Taiwan. Absolutely, that's fine. But why don't we arm ourselves? We have no strike capacity at all. The Prime Minister in his speech said he would enhance our strike capacity. I would ask him, what is our strike capacity? You tell me what enemy we could strike with anything in our existing arsenal. Now, by all means, arm Taiwan. But if you're going to arm Ukraine and arm Taiwan, here's a radical thought. How about arming Australia at the same time? But look, as for Rudd, I think those comments are contemptible, and they increase the chance of the government winning the election. But honestly, neither side of politics has one skerrick of credibility in Australian defence over the performance of the last two Coalition and Labor periods in office. Since the end of Howard, they have both been an unmitigated disgrace in what they've provisioned with defence, which is basically nothing at all.
Well said, Greg. But when I say defend yourself, I'm taking the leaf right out of the Chinese playbook. For 30, 40 years, they first focused on defence before they started building things like aircraft carriers for strike capability. We don't have any ability really to defend our coast. I find that really quite frightening. And by the way, China's just announced an extra 7.1% on its military budget. It's pushing fast forward on that. Greg Sheridan, thank you so much for your time.